Nature has collected all of her beauties together in one chosen place, wrote John C. Fremont in 1842 when describing the land that later became the state of Wyoming. As a result of its inspiring landscape, Wyoming enjoys a special place in our country's history. It is only fitting that Wyoming is known as the Equality State because it was the first state to give equal rights and opportunities to women. It was the first state to allow women to vote and to hold public office, as well as the first to allow women to serve on juries. Wyoming also has the country's first female judge and the first female governor. Wyoming is also known as the Cowboy State, which pays tribute to the hard work and independence of early ranchers and pioneers. Wyoming is the real Wild West, whose famous people have made significant contributions to the history of our nation and the state of Wyoming. From Jim Bridger, famous frontiersman, to Buffalo Bill Cody, one of America's most renowned Wild West characters, to Jedediah Smith, famous mountain man, to Chief Washakie, renowned Shoshone warrior. These famous Americans set a code of justice that formed the foundations and spirit of American justice. And for the last 30 years, that same spirit of genuine justice, that sense of equality, and that tradition of hard work and self-reliant independence of Wyoming has formed the heart, the soul, and the backbone of one of America's finest trial lawyers, Kent Spence, a third-generation Wyomingite, son of legendary lawyer Jerry Spence. Kent's folks are typical salt-of-the-earth folks. Jerry took the family hunting, fishing, horseback trips, and backpacking in the Wyoming mountains. The family spent summers on their ranch where the kids learned the value of hard work. In fact, Kent, as a young man, loved working with his hands, so initially he worked on ranches. He worked summers during high school as a carpenter assistant. Kent moved the largest building ever moved in Wyoming, a historical barn located 6 miles up a wilderness road upstream from the ranch in the dead of winter. Today it serves as the center of the Trial Lawyers College. So inspired by the now famous case of Karen Silkwood versus Kerr-McGee Corporation, the story which was told in the Academy-nominated movie Silkwood, Kent changed the direction of his whole life and attended the trial and became a trial lawyer himself in 1986. With his father Jerry as his mentor, even before he became a lawyer, Kent investigated and worked on the preparation of Jerry's Collins Catch the Bear murder trial in South Dakota. Kent also served with Jerry as support counsel in the Sandra Jones murder defense, which was the subject of Jerry's book, Smoking Gun. Kent was a co-counsel to Jerry's lead self-defense of Randy Weaver, who was tried on first-degree murder and later acquitted. Kent and Jerry co-counseled the Faoud Katie civil rights case. Kent has obtained well over $100 million in jury verdicts and settlements in the last 3 decades as a trial lawyer for the people in some of his own successful cases. Personally and spiritually, Kent has a long-standing and deep connection with the Shoshone tribe on the Wind River Indian Reservation in Wyoming. He's a graduate of the Trial Lawyer College and has been on the faculty for the past 21 years. He has taught thousands of lawyers the TLC method developed by his father, Jerry. Kent has been honored with an award of the top 100 trial lawyers in Wyoming by the National Trial Lawyers Association since 2008 and has served as their president in 2004 to 2005. And following in the footsteps of his Wyoming forefathers, Jim Bridger, Buffalo Bill Cody, Jedediah Smith, Chief Washakie, and his father, Jerry Spence, Kent's 30-year history of serving the people of America exemplifies that same code of genuine justice, that sense of equality, and that tradition and spirit of hard work and self-reliance which has formed the heart, the soul, and the backbone of one of America's finest lawyers, Kent Spence. In this insider exclusive investigative network TV special, Wyoming Trial Lawyer for Justice, Kent Spence, our news team goes behind the headlines to visit with Kent at his home in Du Bois, Wyoming. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Du Bois, Wyoming. It is my great pleasure to introduce Kent Spence to the show. Welcome to the show, Kent.
Thank you.
Kent, you've been a trial lawyer for 30 years, representing people against the Goliaths of the world. What does it mean to you to be a real trial lawyer?
Well, a real trial lawyer is somebody who fights only for human beings, not for corporations, not for banks, not for insurance companies, but for individuals, and gets down inside the feelings of the human being and finds out what actually happened to them, and how can I get full justice for them? How can I fight to get them full justice?
In America today, that's a pretty tough road to travel, isn't it? To get real justice for real individuals, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, there are so many things that it depends on. It can be, you might have a bad judge, you might have a good judge.
Yeah, when you say a bad judge and a good judge, you get all the facts in your favor. But if a judge doesn't see it that way, you're out of luck sometimes.
Well, you're not really out of luck, but you have to deal with that judge. Mm-hmm. And dealing with the judge is just like dealing with anyone else. And eventually the jury sees the truth of the case in spite of the influence a judge might have on it.
In your 30 years, you've covered a lot of cases, and you have been on cases with your dad, Jerry.
Yes.
Tell our audience a little bit about some of the most memorable cases and the moments in those cases, including some that you served with your dad.
I really was influenced heavily by the Karen Silkwood case at the very beginning. That's when I really started thinking about becoming a trial lawyer.
Right. Why did that influence you?
I realized that I could actually do something with my life besides I was a carpenter. And instead of just pounding nails and doing the kind of work that I wanted to do, which was finish work, which meant that I had to work for wealthy people, all of a sudden I realized that I could actually fight for individuals, and I could stand up as a cause lawyer, and I could fight this big power out there to get real justice for individuals.
Mm-hmm. And that's sometimes a big fight, isn't it? In that particular case, it was against Kerr McGee. Karen Silkwood died as a result of her exposure to, was it plutonium, uranium?
Well, she didn't die as a result of the exposure. She actually died in a car accident that people believed that the industry was responsible for, because she was carrying documents that They were trying to keep concealed.
Yeah, and there was never any resolution to that.
No, but the documents that she was carrying disappeared after the car wreck.
Yeah.
So, but another case that was a big influence on me and that I got to participate in was the Randy Weaver case.
Yeah.
That was standoff in northern Idaho. It was Ruby Ridge, and Randy Weaver was a white supremacist that lived up in the woods with his family, and we didn't agree with his views and some of his racist views, but he wasn't harming anyone. He was living up in the middle of Idaho, and he wanted to be left to himself. And the government came in, they shot his wife, blew her face off, they shot his son right through the heart and killed him, and they caused the whole problem. So it was just great to be able to get justice for an individual. Mm-hmm. It was a criminal defense case. He was acquitted, and then we turned around and brought a civil case, and got several $1 million for the civil case.
Yeah. Now I think was it the FBI? The government ended up paying something like, I don't know, $3 million or something like that.
$2 million, yeah.
But it always kind of gets me when the government admits to no responsibility, as they did in that case, right? They just pay out money. Wasn't that right?
That's true.
Yeah. What does that mean to you? That's kind of like a slap in the face, isn't it? Why are they paying money if they're not admitting responsibility?
Well, that all happens in almost every case. They all want to say, well, we're not admitting liability, we're just paying money.
Between you and me, why are they paying money then?
Well, we know why, and everybody else knows why too. So it's really kind of silly for them to say, well, we're not admitting fault.
Now, you've had some other big cases like Lee versus the California State Fair.
Yeah, one of my first multi-million-dollar verdicts was the Lee versus California State Fair, and that was in Sacramento, California, where a huge 320-pound semi-pro football player pushed my smaller Asian guy so hard, had an anger problem, and pushed him so hard that it threw him through the air, and he landed on the back of his head and cracked his skull front to back and side to side and died of brain injuries 5 days later.
Yeah.
They got a $3.5 million verdict on that.
What about the Jamie Bad Hart Bull case?
You know, that was a real justice case. That was a civil rights case, and he was a gay, Native American, alcoholic with AIDS. So, I mean, he had almost everything going against him. Yet he was a human being, and he was in the justice system in Wyoming. He was in jail. He was being transported from across Wyoming, and he started having a seizure. And rather than take him into the medical center that they were 5 minutes away from, the sheriff said, "Nah, just bring him back, he'll be fine." Well, he died out in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, on a long road trip. And so we sued the state of Wyoming, we sued Torrington, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And we got the law completely changed as a result of that case. It was a confidential settlement, but we got all the jail policies changed. We got the whole medical policy changed for the inmates, and then they had to report back to me for several years to come.
What are some other memorable cases that you felt, because you participated in it, because you were the, let's say, lead counsel, things changed and you got justice for people?
There's a case that you've actually reported on previously, was Mike Melton.
Right.
And that was a very, very important case to me. It was against the oil industry, and we turned down $8 million the night before the closing argument and settled it for a lot more the next day for a confidential amount.
Yeah.
But it was important because they were offering essentially nothing to Mike Melton. And here he was, a human being that was severely burned on his face and his hands, and he had complex regional pain syndrome, and he was in extreme pain all the time.
Yeah.
And the only way that he could get justice was for us to go in and have a month-long battle in federal court in Utah and to get real justice for him, and we did it.
The common thread through all of these cases are that the defendants you sue, corporations, law enforcement, really don't give a damn about individuals. Would you agree with that?
I'd say that's true largely of the government in civil rights cases, which I've done a lot of, and in civil cases too. The insurance companies, there's almost always insurance behind this.
Right.
But the insurance companies just see it as another number. They don't care about the individual. They don't care about justice. And the only way that you can make them care is to take their money.
How do you think, because let's look at insurance companies, let's look at law enforcement. They're all comprised of human beings. They're individuals. If this happened to them, their families, their families were burnt like Mike Melton or left to die someplace in the middle of Wyoming, they'd want the same sense of justice. How do you change the mentality of the human beings that are working for the defendants so that there is better justice in America? How do you do that?
You can't. I hate to tell you that I'm jaded in that regard, but you can't change the individuals that are, even the defense lawyers.
Yeah.
The defense lawyers might be great people, go to church, be wonderful people in their community, have fabulous little children, but in order for them to do that kind of work, to deny justice of human beings for billable money, they have to shut off their emotions and their feelings and get down to the dirty work of trying to deny somebody justice.
Yeah. That must irk you and everybody else that's ever been against them, right?
It does. You just can't let it, make you lose any sleep, because otherwise how are you going to fight the next fight?
Yeah, that leads to another thing. We talked about this earlier about justice. What is justice? What is justice in America today, and how do you get it?
Well, if you're in a criminal defense case, justice is making the prosecution carry their burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the person did it. And there's so many cases where people are truly innocent, or they should be given a second chance in those kind of cases. And that's justice, is when you can actually get an acquittal, or you can at least cut a better deal for the person. In a civil case, sadly, the only kind of justice we can get is money justice.
So you have been on the board at an organization called the Trial Lawyers College, which is right up the road. And you've been on there for, what, 21 years, right?
Well, I haven't been on the board that long, but I've been teaching in the college for 21 years and given about a month of my life a year for 21 years.
What do you teach these lawyers that come to this college to further the spirit of justice?
Well, the first thing we do is we work with them in the first few days to sort of shed all the layers of the onion and get down to who they really are. Because in society, we all start building up these layers. We all start having these ideas about who we are, these images of who we are. And as lawyers, it becomes even worse because we have all these ideas of what makes a great lawyer and how do we act like a great lawyer. So they come in with all these sort of pretentious layers protecting who they really are. And down inside, we're all really the same. We're small human beings that care and that want love.
Yeah. Would you say that one of the common elements of a lawyer who hasn't been trained, let's say through the Trial Lawyers College, is that they don't properly get in the shoes of their client?
Yes.
Would you say that?
Yeah, and the only way that we can get in the shoes of someone else is if we get in our own, down inside our own self and get real with ourselves. But that's one of the main things that we teach in the college is how do we really get in touch with the emotional thread of the other person? You know, how do we get down inside what's really going on so we can stand in that other person's shoes?
How do you do that?
Well, first you have to do a lot of work on yourself. And once you get more in touch with yourself, then during one of the main things that we use is we use a reenactment technique. And so we reenact cases and we get down inside the emotion of the case through bringing the story to life.
Give us an example of a case that you have used while you've been teaching at Trial Lawyers College.
Well, for example, I had a client who used a defective gun and the gun blew his leg off and he had amputation below his knee. And so I did a reenactment with him. I didn't actually do a reenactment. What I did is I said, you know, if I was you before this happened and you were to say something to yourself about who you were before, what would it be? And he just broke down and cried. And his wife said, you know, that was the first time he actually showed any real emotion about losing his leg. And the reason he did is because he realized by looking at his former self, he saw what he had lost. He had lost the ability to do all these things with his children and do all the things outdoors that he loved and to not just be a slave to a prosthetic.
Would you say that, you know, after a lawyer goes through the Trial Lawyers College, that they get more in tune with the jury? They relate to the jury more and their client. They can convey that story to the jury better.
Yes, and one of the things I learned from my dad is that, you know, if we don't show somebody else who we are, they won't show us who they are.
Yeah.
And so if we hide behind all these layers and don't show the jury who we are, guess what? The jury's going to do the same thing, and we're never going to connect.
Yeah.
And so by opening ourselves up and by showing them who we really are and being vulnerable, the jury becomes vulnerable. And when the jury becomes vulnerable, we get to see who they really are, and we get to connect on a human level. And when we connect, we have a real opportunity to win the case.
You've been in a unique position all your life, 30 years a trial lawyer, but your dad is one of America's greatest and most successful trial lawyers, Jerry Spence. How has he influenced the way you think, not only about the law, but your own personal life?
Well, it's a big question because he is a big personality, but he has had a massive effect in my personal life and in my trial life. In my personal life, he's just been somebody who has always taught me that if you don't have your credibility and if you aren't straight with people, then you've got nothing. Because if you don't have your credibility, nobody trusts you, and you've lost everything you really are. Mm-hmm. And so that carried on into, that's the key thing that carried on into my trial practice, is that even when I'm dealing with the other side and I'm in war, they're gonna know that my word is good. They're gonna know that when I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. And if that means we're gonna go to trial, they know we're gonna go to trial unless they pay the money.
There's another big influence in your life, and you can see it at your beautiful house here in Du Bois. We're actually not in Du Bois, are we?
No, we're 10 miles east of Du Bois.
What is this area called?
This is the East Fork of the Wind River.
And across the river is the Shoshone Indian tribe property, right?
Yeah, and actually the Wind River Indian Reservation is the Arapaho and the Shoshone tribe.
Okay.
But this area right here, this whole valley, is full of artifacts. And across the river is the Indian Reservation, and this really was Shoshone country. This was Chief Washakie was the key leader of the Shoshone people, and this was their grounds. They called this the Worm Valley.
Yeah. You spend a lot of time with friends on the Shoshone Reservation, correct?
I do. I have really close friends that I'm kind of like a
family member
of, and they're all descendants of Chief Washakie. And one of my really close friends is James Trosper, who's the Sundance chief of the Shoshones. So for several decades, I've gone down during their Sundance in August, and I go down and attend the Sundance. They go 3 days and 3 nights without any food or water, dance and drum and call in the spirit, and that's been a real big influence on me.
How has it changed you, their philosophy? How do you think differently about life?
Well, I think that it's unlike a lot of religions, it's more of an earth-based spirituality. Mm-hmm. And so it's put me more in touch with earth. It's put me more in touch with my intuition. Mm-hmm. It's put me more in touch with sort of trusting the Great Spirit.
The Great Spirit being?
Some power greater than us.
Has it influenced you somewhat in the way you practice law?
I think so. I see things from a tribal standpoint. Mm-hmm. The Trial Lawyers College is a tribe. We call it a tribe. I have my own family as a tribe that my father's the head of. I see myself in the courtroom as a tribal leader, so that when I'm with the jury and I'm connecting with them and I'm opening up to them, that they're part of the tribe, and we form a tribe. And when we form a tribe, the opposite side can't get in,
right? Because
they're all coming from their mind, from some intellectual standpoint,
yeah,
and some non-feeling standpoint, and they can't get inside the tribe once it's formed.
Right. To everybody in America who's not a lawyer, what do you have to say to them about the American judicial system?
Sadly, it's broken. For so many people, they can't even get justice. We can't, our law firm, and when I take cases, I can only take so many cases. And they have to, we do have to think about things in terms of business to some degree, mm-hmm. and they do have to make some kind of business sense. Now, I've done tons and tons of pro bono work, and I continue to do that. And that's very gratifying. But a lot of cases have to be turned down that are just cases, because somehow either the law is not supporting it, and there's a lot of bad law out there. So we have to work within the law, we have to work within the system, and there's just some cases that really cry out for justice,
right,
that never get justice.
Right. Any parting words to America?
Never give up. If you feel that you've been wronged, this is one country. We still have some opportunity to fight to get real justice. And so don't give up. If you can't get it through the legal system, get it some other way. Do something positive with what's happened to you to make it better for others.
Thank you very much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.